I have, as you can see in front of me, lengthy, emphasis on the word lengthy bios on all these people. But you want to hear what they have to say, not what they've done in the past. So, skipping all the bios, let's have, in this order, right down the road, we'll give each of you 4 or 5 minutes to state your case, or how you see the issues. Say who you are, what's your district, and what general area you're from. So, Sue, you're up first.
Very good, thank you. Very good. Thank you for having me. I'm Sue Rezin, the state senator in the 38th district. First of all,
which is located where? So,
and it is located in Will, Grundy, LaSalle, Bureau, Putnam, Livingston, and Kendall County. I'm considered one of those. I'm considered one of those downstate districts. I came into the Senate in 2011. I actually came really during the lame duck session was my first week. So one of the first debates on the floor that I heard was about the income tax increase at the time in 2011. And I remember at about 1:30 in the morning with the debate going on that the case was being made that we need an income tax increase in order to help pay our backlog of bills and also help to with our credit rating and help with our pensions. Fast forward to about 2014, after $30 billion in new revenue that have come into the state, and we're still in the same spot with a backlog of bills, with our credit rating that continues to downgrade 22 times in the history of the state, 16 times in the last decade, and we're still prorating education. When I came into my district, I knew that the state would be a challenge, and obviously I've made such a big impact. Dr. Green asked me today who I am and did I just come into office, so apparently I've made apparently I've made a huge impact. But no, I knew that Springfield would be a challenge, and until we had some say at the table or a seat at the table, I've worked very hard in my district. And the first thing I did when I came into my district is to map it and look and see what the assets are in the district and what can we do to help locally with businesses and creating jobs. And what we did find is we have tremendous assets in the 38th district. I represent the energy and chemical corridor of America with 3 nuclear power plants, gas plants, wind, solar. I have a huge transmission line as a result going through there. We also have soon to be the largest dry mill ethanol plant in the entire world. And then I also have a chemical corridor because of a high pressure gas line that we have coming in that's created a huge advantage for the area. So we've seen firsthand how jobs can be created if we are, working together. They're good paying jobs in the area. But I continue to hear from all of my tours through the manufacturers and throughout my district that, Sue, you have so many things in the state to offer in terms of logistics and assets, but the challenge is still being in the state of Illinois. So when these companies in the past were looking to invest or grow, Illinois was not on their short list. They would invest capital in other states, but they do want to be in this state. So, I look forward to, as we'll talk about today, the 2 big elephants in the room are pensions and our backlog of bills, especially with the income tax rolling off. So I look forward to a robust discussion today. Many things, as you'll see, my counterparts, we will agree or agree to disagree on many things. But one thing that we'll all agree on is that Senator Kotowski's jokes are not funny, just so you know. But we agree on everything else.
Thank you very much, Senator Rezin. After that last line, you will
Thank you, Tina.
never be not forgotten. That is unforgettable. Very good. My state senator, and I know who you are, Kwame Raoul. By the way, he will say they're the 2 big donkeys in the room, but go right ahead.
All right. Paul knows who I am because he's got a vote for me. That's because the last few times I was unopposed, so I don't know whether that's just.
So was the guy before you.
I want to acknowledge Tony Prattwinkle 10 years ago. Really, if it weren't for her, I wouldn't be sitting here. She was one of the committee who appointed me 10 years ago when the previous guy vacated his seat. Governor Rauner is put in a difficult position of coming in after the temporary income tax increase expired at the end of last calendar year. But he kind of asked for that circumstance as well, because he asked us as a General Assembly, as we were approaching the new General Assembly, not to act during lame duck session to fill the hole in fiscal year 15 with any form of revenue. So he's in that position, and he had to both deal with fixing fiscal year 15, which we just did with something that previously was a bad word. Fund sweeps. I listened, and as we used them in the past, and many of the people who were critical of them became fans. Most recently with the fiscal year 15 fix. I did not vote for the fiscal year 15 fix. I think we, in a lot of areas, we were already underinvesting, whether it's education, healthcare, and part of the fiscal year 15 fix involved 2.25% across the board cuts. I don't believe in across the board cuts. I believe in prioritizing. I think that's what we should have done. But the number one reason I didn't vote, we have invested in the Capitol and the Capitol building. And one of the things that I found out was a good investment was that the green buttons on the other side of the aisle are working. And I wanted to make sure that those buttons were working.
Good one.
To stay on a positive note, one of the things that Governor Rauner did when he first came in, and this does impact the budget going forward, is he said he wants to confront criminal justice reform. I penned a letter to the editor along with the governor as he appointed a criminal justice reform commission. Senate President Cullerton appointed a Senate Committee on Restorative Justice, which I chair. We currently have 49,000 people in the Department of Corrections and facilities designed for 32,000. We refer juveniles to the Department of Juvenile Justice at a cost of about $111,000 a year, and we're referring juvenile misdemeanors to the Department of Juvenile Justice. If that doesn't make sense, I've got a bill to try to fix that. We ought not be sending juveniles to the Department of Juvenile Justice for things we wouldn't send adults to the Department of Corrections for. So, starting out on a good note, I'm working hand in hand with the governor on criminal justice reform, and I thank him for taking that on. I'm also encouraged by the governor's commitment to increase his investment in education. The proposed budget suggests to do so by about $500 million. Important thing to note, though, is that that's offset with cuts in, to other areas of education. Mainly, I just went down to Springfield with my son this past week, and he's a 17-year-old, and we stopped by colleges on the way down and on the way back, and then I started thinking about the 31% proposed cut to higher education, and I said, oh my God, this is something that's going to directly impact me as well as a lot of other middle-class families across the state. And so I'm hoping that when we get the real proposed budget, that type of a deep cut is not in there. I'm a son.
That's, though you're my state senator, time of the gentleman has expired.
All right, good.
By the way, as you guys should know, Kwame, this comes as a shock. His district's in Chicago from the south side to the north side. I have so many great lines, but you're my state senator, so I'm not saying anything. By the way, we have questions coming in already, and only 2 people have spoken. So if you have a question, unlike these, make them rather brief. No need to make it into a mini-series. So please, Dan Kotowski, and before we let you talk, Dan, his mom and dad are here. Mr. Ed Mazur and I have known these folks for a couple of years. Stand up, Jinx and Kaz, there you go. Come on. Jinx worked for some guy named Devine. I think he was in politics, right? He was in politics. State's attorney, and of course he has Mr. City College. All right, now that I got that done, you go ahead.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here today. I want to thank the City Club and the Board of Governors for inviting me here today with this bipartisan panel of legislators to talk about the state budget. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to thank the members of the audience. I also want to thank my mom and dad for coming here today, and for Jackie Robinson Ivy for the opportunity. Thank you so much for your friendship. Let's be clear about something. The budget is a moral document. It reflects our values and our priorities in the state of Illinois. It also reflects the need to live within the means provided by taxpayers and to fund programs based on whether they're working or not. To fund programs based on whether we're protecting people who are the most vulnerable members of our society, but also to create opportunity for people within the state of Illinois, students who are seeking an education so they can have a world-class education and so they can be successful. The budget also presents us with an opportunity to right what's wrong, to fix what's been broken in the past. And one thing that's been broken is we have 40% of our budget, which is 700 of these special funds that have been created, which haven't been subjected to the same scrutiny as other areas of the state budget. Other areas of the state budget have been hemorrhaging. And meanwhile, these special funds have accrued a balance of billions, and that's wrong. So one of the things I was happy about was to partner with my colleagues from both sides of the aisle to vote for the budget fix last week. And the budget fix was very important because it provided $1.3 billion, and did you know there was surplus money of $1.3 billion to fund child care, mental health, and to support people who are living with developmental disabilities. This is very important, and we did this all without raising taxes, all without borrowing money, and we did this in a bipartisan fashion. Which brings us to fiscal year 16. So while we've done this, and like I talked about before, addressing all of these special funds to make sure we address our current programs, what's going to happen in fiscal year 16? Now, something Governor Rauner did, which I agree with, is he followed the law that I authored and passed, which required the state to live within the means provided by taxpayers, only spend the money that we have. But what I disagree with the budget that he proposed is that he booked $2.2 billion of savings from pensions. Well, you can't do that in the current budget year. The law has to be passed, and the Supreme Court would have to rule it constitutional or not. So you just can't book it. And there are other three areas that I disagree with. Number one, to echo what my colleague said, a $387 million cut to higher education is just untenable at this moment. We need to invest in higher education. What it's going to lead to, we have world-class educational institutions, and we have 3,800 startup businesses, technology businesses in Chicago. What's this going to lead to is fewer classes, fewer teachers, and increased tuition, which is going to lead to what? Fewer people getting access to the American dream. The second thing I disagree with is this: reduction in funding for local government. $653 million reduction, which is going to lead to what? Increased property taxes and decreased services and support for public safety. Decreased support for firemen, policemen, and emergency services. So I disagree with that. The third thing I disagree with, thank you. Third thing I disagree with is the cuts to human services. $1.5 billion cut to services for people living with developmental disabilities. That means misericordia, people who are suffering from addiction, and also people who are living with mental health difficulties. I disagree with that, but here's what's going to happen. More people are going to be homeless, more people are going to be in prison, more people are going to be in the emergency rooms. We're all going to pay for it on the back end, which is tragic. Now, Sister Rosemary, if you're listening, I'm not going to let that happen. The last point is this. Now, Governor Raoul did do something I agree with. He provided for an increase in education by several $100 million. I think that's important. He also provided for an increase in early childhood funding. I agree with that. That's very important. I also agree with the governor's desire to live within the means provided by taxpayers. But we can't fill a $4 billion hole by simply cutting our way out of it. We just can't do it. We can have a balance of the two. But a budget is a moral document, and we have a moral imperative to do both things: to live within the means provided by taxpayers, but to fund programs and essential services so people have an opportunity to lead a decent life, a quality of life. It's the opportunity to get the jobs that are out there and the education they deserve. And so people who are suffering the most, who are struggling the most, women, parents who are looking for childcare are able to go to work and get childcare. And that's what's so important about us moving forward. We need to work together and work with the governor to achieve these goals, but to make sure we do this in a bipartisan fashion to get an equitable funding solution on the table. Thank you.
Senator. Before we go to Senator Althoff, your district's in the northwest suburbs, correct?
It is.
And it has a wonderful university out there, I heard.
Roosevelt University.
Oh, that's the one I forgot.
Yes.
Okay. Senator Althoff, where are you from? And okay.
Again, thank you to the City Club. I've been in the audience on numerous occasions, but this is the first opportunity I've had to be part of the panel. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm not so sure I thank you for sitting me next to Senator Kotowski and allowing me to follow him once again. I represent the 32nd District. It encompasses most of McHenry County, a small sliver, but very important sliver of Lake County. I actually cover most of the chain of lakes area from shore to shore. Very proud of that. I have been in the Senate since 2003. I have served as the minority spokesperson on appropriations, with the chairman being Dan Kotowski. I'm used to this passion and eloquent delivery. He also does not tell funny jokes. You offered. I now, because I can't stand that any longer, I now serve as the minority spokesperson since 2011 on revenue with Senator Troy Hutchinson. And I'm going to segue a little bit. I also serve at a national level on the National Conference of State Legislators. I have served as the co-chair of SALT. It's a task force. It's state and local taxation. I've done this since 2006, and I am a staunch supporter for streamlined sales tax. Thank you to my colleague, Senator Harmon, who's sitting up here in the front. We actually finally passed legislation that dealt with Nexus, and any entity that sells a product on the internet that has Nexus in Illinois, we get to collect that sales tax. Unfortunately, there are numerous entities in the internet world who sell products, and we cannot collect that sales tax. And that is estimated, possibly conservatively, to bring an additional $500 million today, and grows every year as more and more people choose to purchase product off the internet. We really need to focus in on that, and it's not a new tax, it's not a new revenue, it's monies we should be collecting and can't. I've been happy to work with Senator Durbin at the national level, and we're trying to get this passed right now. I also want you to know that I'm extraordinarily proud to have worked, really, with this gentleman sitting to my left, as well as Representative Belloc and Representative Barbara Flynn Curry and Fred Crespo, all from the suburban area, on passing GATA, which is the Grant Accountability and Transparency Act. And why this is extraordinarily important to all of you and to the budget is 74% of the General Revenue Fund funds are grant programs that either the state provides or provides pass-through availability for federal dollars. There are $45 billion on an annual basis that flows through in grant form to other entities, to providers in the state of Illinois. And it is estimated by not only our Auditor General, but by COGFA, that 6% of those dollars are lost to us in waste and fraud. We finally actually passed an act that is going to require uniform standards when it comes to applying and processing and then reporting on those grants, so that we're not losing any percentage of those dollars, and they actually are going for the purpose that they're supposed to. So those are a few things that we've done in addressing the budget. We have more work to do. I'm extraordinarily pleased that we actually funded the hole that we had in 2015, and now can move forward and really worry about how we're going to fund services and the things that we provide at the state level in 2016. I believe that we have great opportunity here. I think the governor has showed his willingness to work in a bipartisan fashion. I think he has showed and reflected his compassion on exactly what Senator Kotowski indicated. We did not cut. We actually provided additional money in 2015 for DD, autism, mental health programs. I think that speaks highly of the availability of all of us when we really are challenged to work collaboratively together. And the reason I'm on this panel is because I am the Pollyanna and I'm nice.
You know, you were going to get that invitation again, but that last line, you know. This is the City Club of Chicago. From Tom Donovan. Make your answer rather short because this is a prediction. By the way, we need more questions. Do we have our people? Raise your hand. If you have questions, bring them up and she'll collect them and we'll bring them up. Okay. Please ask each of the panelists for their opinion on the Supreme Court and how it will decide the pension legislation. No reason to start off with a tough one. Go right ahead there.
I believe the Supreme Court will rule that the Senate Bill 1 that we passed is unconstitutional.
And what do you think is going to happen then?
I think then we take up Governor Rauner's proposal that draws a line in the sand. As of July 1st, 2015, all of those benefits that you earned prior to that time, you keep, which protects the retired state employees. And as you go forward, we all fall into Tier 2.
Okay, Dan Kotowski.
I agree with Senator Althoff. I do disagree with her about my sense of humor, but that's a point for another day. So I think what we need to do moving forward is to make every effort necessary to protect people who worked hard and play by the rules, who are seniors living on fixed income, that we protect their retirement. And we need to make sure that we have a proposal moving forward that's balanced and constitutional. We thought that we had passed one over to the House that wasn't moved forward on last time. So I look forward to the leadership of Senator Raoul. He did a great job last time on Senate Bill 1, and I'm sure he's going to do the same moving forward. But we have an opportunity. But we need to make sure, be very clear about this, that it needs to be bipartisan. We need to work together, and we need to address this challenge. Just in this budget year alone, it's an extra $500 million for pension payments. And that takes even more money away from funding the rest of the budget.
Kwame?
And notwithstanding me having chaired the conference committee and sponsored Senate Bill 1, I was there for the hearing, a front row seat as Justice Thomas, that's Bob Thomas, not Clarence, asked the question of how can you say that it's an emergency situation that will dictate the use of police powers when you've just allowed the income tax increase to expire. And so given that question, the questioning coming from the conservative justices on the court, I agree in part with Senator Althoff that it will be found unconstitutional. The basis of which it being found unconstitutional is because we have a pension protection clause that recognizes a contract, and based on that, Governor Rauner's proposal would also be found unconstitutional. So I don't think we should be wasting our time with that. And we certainly, as Senator Kotowski indicated, cannot book $2.2 billion of savings based on that proposal.
I agree with my colleagues to the right of me. It will be a challenge, but what was important is we had to take the vote to move that piece of legislation into the court system. And for me, especially somebody who represents a district that I do, which is a swing district, it's a very difficult vote, obviously, but it's unsustainable. When you have the worst funded pensions in the country and at 39%, you have to do something. This is a big elephant in the room, and no budget discussion goes further without a serious conversation about pensions. There are many people who said, I don't support Senate Bill 1, but we needed to put it into the court system. That's an easy thing to say, but yes, I did support Senate Bill 1. It was important to get it to the state Supreme Court. One of three things could happen. One, they could uphold it and find it constitutional. Two, the justices could find it unconstitutional. Or three, they could find part of it constitutional and give us a roadmap as to make the rest of it, how you make the rest of it constitutional if they find it unconstitutional. If they do come out and say the entire thing's constitutional, we're back at the drawing board. But make no, the challenge will be the credit rating agencies will look at that and continue to downgrade us unless we have something put in place. The bill that the governor has proposed is something that we've proposed for many years and tried to get it out of committee, and it's a hybrid model. So you go from a defined benefit, a DB, to a defined contribution, DC. It's a hybrid model. Many private industries do it, and other states have done it as well. So there's only so many avenues that we have. We cannot tax enough to tax our way out of this pension crisis. So it will be bipartisan. I do commend my colleague, Senator Raoul, for really standing up and being the chairman of this committee. It's a very tough discussion to have, but one that we need to have.
Okay, sort of the big question facing everyone. Another quick comment from anybody?
Just a real quick point that over the past several years, there hasn't been a pension payment that's been missed. And plus, as a result of the revenue that was raised, about $21 billion went to invest in the pensions, and the other went in bonds related to the pensions. So we've invested more in the pension system over the last 4 years than we did in decades, last 4 decades. So the commitment has been realized in that particular area. But it's very important that we continue to do that. But I thought it was important because many people are still under the impression that the pension payments haven't been made. They have been made, and they've been made repeatedly. The challenge, as pointed out here, is they continue to increase in size and scope.
Paul, the hope is that, one of the hopes in the decision is that there'll be some dicta in the decision that gives us a guideline as to what we can do. And that's the importance of waiting for a decision as we seek to tackle the problem, because it does cut into about a quarter of our budget.
And I'm going to jump in real fast, too, and just note that there are other things we can do as well before we wait for the court. And one of those things very easily is not to allow overtime to be applied toward your final pension payment. So there are other avenues that we can address while we're waiting for this.
And also, I'd like to, and Senator Kotowski is right, we have, since I've been in session, we have made our pension payments, but a couple years prior to that, we completely missed pension payments and borrowed probably about $20 million or $20 billion. So we're repaying the bonds back, and that's why it's a large part of our budget right now. So we do need to tackle it.
Okay, not that this is a big issue or anything, but you each had 2 rounds of it, and next time we have this panel, we're going to ask senators and representatives to respond without using the word challenge. Cowards die many times before their death. The valiant taste death but once. It's a challenge. Big deal. Okay, from Father Ryan. Well, Father Ryan, they just answered. They just dealt with your question. Sorry. President Mayman from Governor State University. Some of us used to work there. I'll make it short. Please comment on the funding level for community colleges in the proposed budget. Oh, what about public universities? Well, they talk about, okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
The reference was made to community colleges, and actually in the proposed 2016 budget, Governor Rauner proposed applying more money to community colleges, so that was a benefit. With regard to public universities, I mean, you have to look at it in the overall scope. No one wants to see reductions to higher education. We all want that opportunity for our children so that they provide a great skilled workforce for this state, so that they stay here, so that they have opportunity. But overall, if you look at the proposal, it really is only a 6% cut to the total budget that most of the universities are receiving. Go ahead, argue with me.
No, I think.
Anyone else want to jump in?
No, I think there's 2 things about the governor's proposed budget that relates to community college. Number one, it's consistent as it relates to last year. So the community colleges were pleased about that, but it's inconsistent in the fact that it sends a mixed message. The reduction in higher education funding is going to lead to a several $1,000s increase if it goes through in tuition, which will make us less competitive with other states. Or they're going to reduce the amount of classes that are available to students, or reduce the number of teachers. Do you realize one of the largest employers downstate south of Springfield is Southern Illinois University? And this kind of a cut will have a $500 million impact on the citizens who live downstate in that area, and on impact on potential jobs that people are going to get, and the jobs they're trained for the industries that are in and around that area. So there is an inextricable link between education and the kind of jobs that are out there, and the success of people graduate from those institutions. So it'll be devastating. So we want to make sure that we hold education funding level, and then we invest it in the way where we see the kind of results that need to be seen with that type of support.
There you go. And you thought that the district was only in the northern suburbs. All right.
So I was on higher education when you cut me off earlier, so I'm going to wait for the Medicaid question so I could talk about the impact of that.
Oh, if the gentleman wants a minute to finish his statement, go right ahead. You are my state senator.
Oh, yeah. since I touch on higher education, the 1.5 proposed $1.5 billion cut to Medicaid would be dramatic. It'd be drastic to some of our safety net hospitals, as well as our major hospitals that take on a disproportionate number of Medicaid patients. My dad was a community physician, and I represent a district, and all districts aren't the same, but it would have a devastating impact in healthcare, on the healthcare for the poor. And I understand this is not a real proposed budget. We're going to wait for that. If it is a real one, then I'd like to see it go up on the board.
And I think that is the key, that the governor, after he delivered her State of the State, which is a vision for the state, which is job creation, voter empowerment, government reform, and priority excellence in education by funding K through 12. It's a starting point. His budget, after he delivered his State of the Budget address, was reflective of existing revenues coming in. It is a balanced budget. And so from this point, the governor has said that we would like to see business reforms. And again, there are business reforms we've talked about for many years that we've never been able to push through committee that will help the burdens and lower the costs for businesses first. So he would like to see the reforms and then the budget. So we look at it as a large, comprehensive negotiation. First, the reforms, the reforms for businesses, and then look at the budget as well. So it's the grand negotiation that will take a couple weeks at least.
Under reforms, Paul, I sat for an entire session negotiating workers' comp reform just several years ago, along with the Manufacturers Association, the Retail Merchants, Chicago Chamber of Commerce. The national NCCI has recommended over $1 billion in savings that has not been passed on by insurance companies. So if we're going to talk about workers' comp reform as a condition to the budget, we got to talk about insurance reform. We've confronted workers' comp reform. There's some who are proposing rules that would just shift cases to the tort system. I don't think we should hold our budget hostage to this idea of work comp reform, tort reform. We can have those discussions, but we got to address the budget, and we have to address it now.
And Paul, just a quick point. I think we also need to look at how the tax code right now unfairly punishes small to medium-sized businesses. If you're a large corporation in the state of Illinois, you are only taxed on goods and services that you sell within the state of Illinois. So there's kind of an exemption in some respects. Larger corporations, multinational corporations aren't paying corporate income tax. Small and mid-sized businesses are. So we need to look at the tax code and make sure that there's parity there. We need to make sure we do that because there's revenue to be had there, but also it sends a message to small business owners and mid-sized business owners that you're not as important. And so all across the budget, we need to look at the fairness and equity that is presented in that budget. Because unfortunately, hardworking men and women, families who are trying to put food on the table, are suffering as a result of that tax code. And we need to make sure that we end that practice.
And I'm going to sum up and just say, not using the word challenge, but opportunity. Is this not a great discussion that you're actually listening to? Think about what's happened with this last election. We finally have balanced government. These are the kinds of conversations we've been wanting to have for the past 10 years and couldn't. And now, because we do have balanced government, we're going to have them. And there are going to be solutions that are put on the table. And I don't think we need to hold the budget hostage, but I think those conversations absolutely, imperatively have to happen in context of that. And where's the priorities going to be and how we're going to spend that money. And it is an opportunity, albeit maybe a tough one, but I really do believe that there are wonderful things that can happen for the state of Illinois under this governor's leadership. And you've heard all of those opportunities.
I agree.
It's a challenge.
Although we did talk about workers' comp reform before this governor came in, so it's not a new topic.
Okay. Now that you all agree, by the way, when is the session supposed to end?
July 15th. Oh, no, May.
Which year? Okay. Graham Grady, Von Steuben graduate. That's how you're known from now on, Graham. This other thing is irrelevant. Illinois. Now, this is a good question. There'll be total agreement on this one, too. Illinois is one of the 10 most regressive income tax states. Do you support income tax reform? I assume you mean a progressive income tax? Yes, I do. All right. I think I know how this is going to work, but Sue, since you're now well known to everybody, why don't you start?
Thank you. Well, this is probably a conversation where you're going to see two different opinions would be my guess. I believe in low flat, no tax states. I look at those states, I think that they're prosperous, they're growing jobs. Companies look, when they look to invest, they look at that. When you invest, people move there, create jobs. When you're creating jobs, 250,000 jobs equates to about $1 billion in revenue. I mean, that's how the private industry needs to be part of this overall picture of what we are trying to do. In regards to a progressive tax, meaning if you're at the higher end of the tax bracket, you pay more, and then in theory, less all the way down. In theory, that sounds good, but when you're in a state that it has, in the past, has their expenses increasing and increasing, in our case, the pensions and Medicaid, just taxing at a higher level, you will still not have enough revenue. So what you have is mission creep, as they call it. So then you have to go down to the next bracket if you need more revenue, or the next bracket if you need more revenue. And before you know it, the middle class, hard-working people are paying a higher tax in order to get enough revenue in the state. So I'm not thoroughly convinced that a progressive tax, even though on the surface sounds good, make the rich pay more, that doesn't bring you in enough revenue, and it also increases ultimately the tax on the very hardworking people, plus it's regressive for people who are looking to invest.
Kwame?
The middle class is already paying more than their fair share because we put it all in consumption taxes. We should absolutely just take off the shackles of a constitutionally mandated flat tax. That doesn't dictate what the tax structure will be, but that just says let's have this discussion without the mandate of a flat tax. Like most of the states that have a income tax have a progressive income tax, like our federal government has a progressive income tax. Let's take that mandate off. Senator Harmon has carried the resolution. I've carried it in the past. We should take that mandate off, because otherwise we're putting that burden on the lower wage earners because we're doing it by way of consumption taxes.
Dan.
So the resolution that was introduced by Senator Harmon and Senator Raoul, I voted for it, and for the reasons that were stated, we need to have different options on our table to generate revenue. As I pointed out before, we have a tax structure in the state of Illinois that unfairly burdens people who are working hard and playing by the rules, whether you're a small business or a mid-sized business, or you're whether someone who's trying to make ends meet with two people working in a family. And it's sad. And so we need to be able to look at this. And we had a proposal a few years ago where we increased the amount of earned income tax credit because inflationary challenges, giving people a chance to be able to earn enough where they can not only put food on the table, but pay for childcare and send their kids to school, be able to stay in their homes and be able to pay for their health care costs and their retirement is everything that we're all about. It's everything. It's the reason why I think we're here, the legacy that we've been left with. So we need to look at these different options. And the biggest struggle that I have is we have people who've made just an obscene amount of money who are just saying that, if we do this, they're all going to leave the state of Illinois. They're all here because we have a world-class city and a world-class environment and world-class schools and world-class people. I mean, the fact remains is that what people want to see is us spend their money wisely and effectively to make a difference in people's lives. They want to have faith in the fact that that's going to happen. That's what they want to see happen. And I'm proud of the fact that I'm going to continue to work and look at these different options to make sure we see that occur in our state.
To close, go ahead.
You can applaud now.
Dan, you got a lot of applause.
Was not a good joke. I would significantly rather focus our attention on looking at the fact that we have an antiquated tax code when it comes to our manufacturing-based revenues. We need to look at service taxes as opposed to looking at a progressive income tax, which I did not support when Senator Harmon ran that piece of legislation.
Doesn't
That's
it
where effort should
go ahead,
be.
I'm sorry.
No, that's where our effort should be.
Doesn't it seem somewhat incongruous that this debate, not that the moderator wants to put his 2 cents in, but I've taken some slings and arrows, so I've earned it. Doesn't it seem incongruous that we have a regressive income tax, flat rate, right? And we can't pay our bills. So you want to maintain the regressive income tax and still try and pay your bills by keeping it. You need more revenue. Where are you going to get it? I know it's a challenge, but it just means if your own checkbook, if you can't balance your checkbook, you either have to cut expenditures, raise revenue, or do both. And I just don't see how this debate's going to move along because you're both, it's like you're playing tennis and you're each hitting a different ball. Well, that's the commentary from the moderator. No applause. How about a round of applause for our panelists?